When it's time to hang up your boots and call it quits, there are a few options available to players. From politics to acting careers, and even doing hard time in the big house. These 2000s icons have done it all, baby! Let's start with one of the kings of the YouTube compilation, a man whose highlights and skill reels are almost unmatched. Yep, I'm talking about Ronaldinho. The Brazilian superstar always played the game in the best way possible. He had a permanent smile on his face. Ronaldinho was the ultimate showboating player, but always provided goals and assists for his clubs like Barcelona, AC Milan, and the Brazilian national team. What's Ronaldinho been up to since retiring? Well, it's been a crazy ride that began with tours playing beach football, and outside of the game he launched his own gin brand. Ronaldinho also made an unlikely appearance in the 2018 movie Kickboxer: Retaliation, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Mike Tyson. Yep, Iron Mike Tyson. It hasn't all been smooth sailing though, as Ronaldinho spent time in a Paraguayan prison accused of traveling with forged documents into the country. He could sidestep any defender during his playing days, but I guess he couldn't sidestep the Paraguayan authorities on this occasion. Speaking of run-ins with the law, let's look at what happened to a Norwegian legend. John Carew, he's bigger than me and you. It was the chant which Aston Villa fans always sang to him. Carew was a great player back in the day, but one who occasionally struggled with discipline and injuries. When he was fit and in good form, he was unstoppable. For Lyon, he infamously destroyed Real Madrid in the Champions League, but if one club really loved Big John Carew, it was Aston Villa, where he scored some outrageous goals. After retiring as a footballer, Carew made a move into the film industry, like Vinnie Jones and Eric Cantona. Standing at 6'4", good-looking, and full of muscle, Carew looked like a movie star already. Alongside some Norwegian films, he most notably had a part in Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, starring Angelina Jolie. Things turned a little sour when Carew was jailed for 14 months for tax evasion, but we're sure he'll be back on a movie set in no time, as long as he pays his taxes in the future. Let's look at one of the all-time greats of the game, Zinedine Zidane. Also known as Zizi or Zizou, the magical Frenchman may have the greatest first touch to ever grace the game. He could do insane things with the ball. It's no surprise that Zidane played most of his career at the very top levels. He was at Bordeaux during one of their golden periods. He then moved to Juventus and quickly became a legend there. He moved on to Real Madrid at the height of their Galactico era and once again has gone down as an all-time GOAT there. For France, Zidane was instrumental in them winning the France '98 World Cup and then immediately following up with a win at Euro 2000. He was able to dominate anyone, even a mighty Brazil team. Since retiring, Zidane still hits the football pitch with his playing boots every now and then, regularly playing for charity. He never left football behind though, becoming a coach at Real Madrid. Eventually, Zidane went from behind the scenes to running the team. Some still question Zidane's managerial ability, given he hasn't stepped away from Madrid yet, managing them in 2 separate spells. Sure, you might get lots of money to play with, but it's not an easy job, and he's won 2 La Ligas and 3 Champions Leagues trophies as manager of Real, as well as several other trophies. Let's stick with former Madrid icons and look at one of England's finest exports. Yes, it's Beck's, Golden Balls himself. David Beckham brought glitz and celebrity to the English top flight. He was the kind of superstar persona people hadn't seen since George Best. Marrying a Spice Girl was also something which brought masses of attention. Despite all the press attention and fans of his image and style, Beckham always performed at a high level for Manchester United, Real Madrid, and England. He also paved the way for a host of successful British players in the MLS. Beckham has clothing endorsements with brands like Adidas, the Tudor watch brand, and his own brand of whiskey. However, Becks didn't leave football behind entirely. He headed up a group to start an MLS team from scratch. Yes, Inter Miami. It took 6 years from purchasing them for $25 million to their MLS debut in 2020. But now the club is up and running and Beckham's love affair with the USA is still on fire. But now let's look at another legend who was actually an old teammate of Beckham. The OG Ronaldo, Brazil's lethal shooter who many argue was the best striker ever. Given Ronaldo Nazario's goal record, it's probably hard to argue. If anything ever held him back, it was his injury record. When Ronaldo was fit, he was unstoppable, and no one else has ever boasted the perfect combination of pace, power, skill, strength, technique, and finishing. He He was the perfect player and also lethal with both feet. Where is R9 now? The Brazil legend has used his profile for good and has been a goodwill ambassador for a UN development program. The former Madrid, Inter Milan, Barca, and PSV legend also made the unexpected move into football ownership by buying a controlling share in Spanish side Real Valladolid and took up the position of president there. Ronaldo had plenty of money from his playing days, but he didn't stop there. He also bought a controlling share in his first club, Cruzeiro, in Brazil. During and after playing, Ronaldo was also a face of Nike. Man, Ronaldo was a dope player, just like this former Arsenal and Barcelona icon. A man who exudes style. Thierry Henry was a player who had raw potential and a hell of a lot of ability at AS Monaco. He arrived at Arsenal as a galloping winger, but was transformed into one of the best strikers of his generation by Arsene Wenger. Henry wasn't just great at scoring goals, his assist record for Arsenal was also amazing, and he played particularly well alongside Dutch maestro Dennis Bergkamp. Henry's reputation as a world-class footballer meant doors would open for him after retirement. He's a regular TV presenter in Britain and France to talk about football. He's also made a move into coaching and management. Henry started as the assistant manager to Belgium national coach Roberto Martinez. Henry was helping to oversee the golden period in Belgian football, with world-class players like De Bruyne and Hazard. He got a big chance to prove his qualities as a head coach when he got the chance to manage Monaco. Monaco had come into big bucks and were spending money to try and keep up with PSG. But it didn't last long as Henry's spell proved to be disastrous. Yep, as it turns out, being a world-class player won't always translate to success as a manager. It was said Henry expected all his players to play to the levels he could in the old days. After a spell managing Montreal Impact in the MLS, which was also a failure, Henry returned to the Belgium national side as their number 2. And while we're on the subject of great players who didn't quite cut it as great managers, Stevie G! The former Liverpool legend Steven Gerrard achieved almost everything possible for Liverpool except for a Premier League trophy. It sadly slipped from his grasp, but Gerrard's dominating heroics in the Liverpool midfield helped them to win arguably the greatest Champions League final ever, as well as a classic FA Cup final against West Ham. Despite interest from Real Madrid and Chelsea over the years, Gerrard remained loyal to Liverpool, finishing his playing career there, and he stayed at the club after retiring as a player to help coach the youth side. Gerrard then took a gamble and headed to Rangers, a sweeping giant in need of a reawakening. He won the Scottish Premier League, breaking up a 9-year run of Celtic wins. The Premier League was inevitable, and Aston Villa came calling. Within a year, Gerrard had been sacked after poor form saw the club hovering dangerously close to the drop. So Gerrard is left with big question marks over his managerial abilities, but the guy isn't just about his football. Hard to believe, but Gerrard was an entrepreneur too, having bought both a restaurant and a cocktail bar. Perhaps one player you might expect to venture into something classy would be Andrea Pirlo. Andrea Pirlo, the Italian midfield maestro, was so good that he virtually won Italy a World Cup all by himself, with a little help from the best goalkeeper in the 2006 tournament, Gigi Buffon. Pirlo, a legend at Juve and Milan, had unbelievable vision and passing ability in the midfield. He made everything look so effortless, and he could literally control the pace of a game. His retirement has seen him make a natural progression into coaching and management, as you might expect. He managed Juventus with moderate success. See, his record was impressive on paper, but at Juve, they expect you to win Serie A. He won a cup. But that didn't fly, and he's since moved on to manage Fatih Karagümrük in Turkey. But that's not all. Pirlo, who is pure Italian style and class, also has his own vineyard. Impressive. Moving on, Rio Ferdinand was perhaps the most successful and accomplished member of the Ferdinand footballing family dynasty. Rio Ferdinand stood out as a top-quality young player at West Ham, and then going through big money moves to Leeds United and Manchester United. It was at Man U where Rio really became one of the best defenders in Premier League history, with classy skills as well as being quick and decisive. After retiring, probably 2 years later than he should have, Rio became a regular face on football football TV channels and even dipped his toes into other forms of media. He had his own prank show for a short time before the 2006 World Cup, which was notorious for one prank where Ferdinand staged a kidnapping on David Beckham. And here's one bizarre fact. Rio, along with his former England teammate Ashley Cole, were both producers for a 50 Cent film Dead Man Running. Now though, Rio is one of the head experts at BT Sports, the main rival of Sky Sports in the UK. And finally, from pranking to politics, here's a Ukrainian hero. At one time during his Milan glory years, Andrei Shevchenko was the most highly rated striker in the land. He was scoring consistently for a superb AC Milan team. The all-time greatest player in Ukraine's history then moved to the Premier League to play with Chelsea, but sadly never quite lived up to his expectations. As a recognizable sporting icon, Shevchenko had a massive profile in his homeland, and after retiring, he made a surprise move to politics. Shevchenko stood for election for his creation, the Forward Party, but he was never really close to being President Shevchenko, with only 2% of the votes. Politics didn't work out, but his interest in improving life for ordinary people did continue, and Shevchenko is currently the vice president of the National Olympic Committee in Ukraine. He ensures that the Olympians presenting the nation are properly looked after. He also spoke out after the Ukraine conflict broke out, urging Italy to help his countrymen fleeing from the war-torn nation, once again using his profile for great things. So, who's your favorite superstar from the 2000s?